What if Deku had wood release? That is the what if we will be discussing today. But before we begin, I would just like to ask you all to put your suggestions down in the comment section below. I'm going to be reading and replying to most of them. Also, if you have a Discord, join the channel Discord, link to that in the description as well. Also, if you do end up enjoying this video or enjoying any of my other videos, please consider subscribing. It really does mean a lot. So now, let's begin. A soft breeze blows right through Izuku's thick brown head of hair as he lay in the middle of a grass field as the grass would sway in the wind, softly touching up against his body. He would lay there smiling towards the sky with his hands behind his head, just smiling, happy as ever, looking on at the clouds. However, Izuku really had no reason to be happy, as just 20 minutes ago, he was sitting in the middle of a doctor's office with beeping machines all around him, as he would end up being told he had no special power, no quirk. He was never going to become a hero. But yet, that didn't bother this 4-year-old. He was sort of an anomaly. He was still happy to have life, and he was grateful. So, Izuku would lay there in the middle of this field, in the middle of the Dagoba village. He would stare up at the sky, just saying he's happy for his life, and even though he can't be a hero, he's still gonna make the best of it, as his mom's trying to raise him as best she can, so he shouldn't give up. Life's not all about being a hero. There's still other ways to be a hero, too. It's not all just fighting villains with your fists and punching them down, as Izuku would of course know this. So we see Izuku push himself up, putting his fingers through his hair, putting it behind his neck, sighing, what a day. I can't believe I'm quirkless. But that's alright. I'll still make Mom proud. Izuku would say, cracking his fingers before getting up, walking through this patch before making it to just a massive forest of trees. He had walked through his backyard for around 5 minutes to his perfect spot, as a stream would be running in the background as the constant trickling of water would flow through Izuku's ears. It was just so peaceful. The birds would chirp as the wind would calmly blow, as the leaves would tussle up against each other. It was just perfect. So as Izuku would be walking back to his house, he would end up opening up the back door before walking inside. There his mother it's at the dinner table, just sitting there eating a sandwich. As she would look over towards him, she would gesture towards the chair in front of her, as Izuku would nod his head, walking over, pulling the chair out and sitting down. Once again, I'm so sorry, Izuku, she would say, stuttering. Tears would start to flow out of her eyes, which Izuku would only put his hand up. It's okay, Mom. I can still become a hero somehow. I just know it, Izuku would say in an innocent childhood voice, although deep down he knew there was little chance for him to become a hero, but he still wanted to give his mother hope. As he would end up smiling, just saying to her that, I'm okay, I'm not sad about this, which she would then end up smiling, patting Izuku on the shoulder. You always had your head up. You were just like your father. Looking on towards a picture of Hisashi, who was away in the United States on a business trip, who had just received the call about Izuku being quirkless. He would end up telling her that Izuku was a strong kid and a strong boy. He took after him after all, so he was sure he'd be fine. And so Inko would, of course, just hopefully hope that Izuku would be the strong kid Hisashi was building him up to be. And of course, that's exactly who he was. The next day, we see Izuku stroll into school with his hands in his pockets, as everyone would be sitting around in a circle. Just as attendance would be called, Deku would slump down onto the floor. As he would hear his name called, he would yell, "Here!" All of the students would then be told they were about to go outside for recess, as all of them would get up. Many of them had heard that Izuku's 4th birthday had just passed yesterday, and were very, very eager to hear about Izuku's quirk. Many of them rushing over towards him, asking him, Izuku, what's your quirk? It would say some with like little sparks in their hands of electricity, or like just growing their fingers longer and then shortening them. As Izuku would on marveling at them with sparkles in his eyes, he would end up shaking his head. Oh, I'm not sure. The doctor didn't make it really clear what my quirk was, Izuku would say, lying through his teeth. However, he had heard about the crimes over the news. Izuku was quite the smart 4-year-old for his age. He had heard about the beatings quirkless kids had gotten, and he didn't want to be like that. So as all of the students would go through their basic education, just going through it, Izuku would completely hide the fact he was powerless, not wanting all the kids to know that he wasn't anything special. He didn't have any cool, unique powers that the rest of them had. So as everyone would be around the playground, Izuku would go out to play with them, playing like things like kickball, dodgeball, just tag, all of those things, all while hiding it. And as the years passed by, more and more kids would start to get skeptical, asking why Izuku had basically never told them what his quirk was. They were confused. Many of them continued to ask him, however Izuku would just shrug his shoulders. You know, I'm not really sure myself. He would give vague answers, hiding it. As he grew older, only did his knowledge, too. So, because of this, he would know that quirkless people were cast aside, and he didn't want to be cast aside. He was just as good as everyone else. He was no different. They only had special powers. That didn't change how well they could type in a Big Mac order at McDonald's. No, Izuku could do that just fine whether if he had a quirk or not. Sure, if he had long fingers, he could be a chef or something while also being a cashier. But who's gonna hire someone like that? That just doesn't make sense because it'd be so difficult and it's so rare. Izuku just shake his to himself. It just doesn't make sense why quirkless people they're just the same physically. They're physically just as fit as everybody else. And yet, all these people with quirks are just given jobs more than quirkless people. It doesn't make any sense. Izuku would say to himself, lying in his bed, staring up at his ceiling fan. As the sun would blare in through his open window, Izuku would end up getting up. Walking outside, he would end up taking another stroll through the woods, making it back to one of his childhood spots. This being the same patch of grass we saw him in at the start of this What If. Izuku would walk over to it, patting on the ground, as a small little sapling would end up growing right on top of this mound of dirt, with grass slowly protruding out of it. Izuku would pat his head on it before resting his head up against it, the dirt mixing in with his dark brown hair. He would stare up towards the sky. However, once he got up, he would realize this sapling was now a mighty oak tree standing before him, towering over him. Izuku would look up towards it, just in complete shock. What the... How the hell did that happen? Izuku would say in complete and utter shock, looking around. Hello? Izuku would say as his voice would echo throughout the woods. I don't have a quirk. I couldn't have done this. Hey, looking around as no one seemed to be there. So, as Izuku just running back to his house, kind of confused, shocked, and a little bit scared, not knowing if a villain had crept in there trying to just do something to him. It was some stupid thought of an 8-year-old after all, as I think we can all agree, when we were 8 years old, we weren't that smart, so if you just saw some tree grow 1 billion feet, and there's heroes and villains in your world with special powers, you might just assume it was a villain. So with Izuku assuming that, rushing back to his house, shakily opening the doorknob, rushing inside, as his mom would mow him down. Whoa, Izuku! What's wrong? She would say, questioning him as Izuku, out of breath, would be huffing and puffing. I think there's a villain outside, Izuku would say, pointing out the window. Inka would walk over to it, staring outside, only just to see absolutely nothing at all. Izuku really hadn't seen anything. It was just his own power. As Inka would stare out the window, she would deadpan towards Izuku. Izuku, there's nothing outside. I don't know what you're talking about. Izuku would only shake his head, swearing. I swear, there was a villain outside. Sure, and I'm sure All Might was there too. You know, Izuku, if you ever want to be the greatest ninja or hero or whatever you call it of this village, you're gonna have to do better than that. Just saying something is a villain isn't gonna get... Saying something's some sort of villain isn't gonna make you any better of a ninja as someone else. Izuku would look towards his mother. I swear, Mom, I swear. Come on, Izuku. Come on. Hey, or Izuku would shake his head, going up to his room. We cut forward 2 years, as Izuku, along with everyone else, would be enrolled into the basic, just a ninja school that everyone would be enrolled in at the age of 10. So, with everyone being enrolled into this ninja school, Izuku knew that with his quirklessness, he was going to have to basically train harder than anybody, as everyone would get this ninja training so that they could be physically fit or be called upon if there was ever a war with another village. So Izuku would get this training where all of them would learn how to run on rooftops, hop from place to place, jump farther, faster than anyone else, run faster than anyone else, throw things like kunais, use katanas and long swords or giant, massive swords, kind of like Zabuza's. So, this training would go through Izuku as he would kind of basically just learn taijutsu and would kind of become sort of like a mini Rock Lee. Just knowing that he can't use any powers, he would train harder than anybody else. So with him just training so hard, doing hundreds of push-ups, squats, and sit-ups every single day, he would slowly, unknowingly be building up his power, building it up as his motivation, his drive, his power. He just kept staying hungry, trying to constantly outwork himself as he would continue just using his muscles, doing hundreds of push-ups, squats, running miles every day, as he would end up quickly just going above everyone else in the physical activities, as everyone would uniquely be able to use their quirks to their advantage as ninja. However, Izuku would be able to use his immense IQ to outsmart everyone, as in this world, yes, quirklessness was quite the disadvantage compared to someone with, say, a lightning quirk, or a very strong one, but to these low-level people with minimal type quirks, these just D-ranked quirks, Izuku was so good at just outclassing them. Well, that was until he met Bakugo Katsuki, someone who had recently moved into his neighborhood and who had a very strong explosion quirk. Someone who quickly started to outwork Izuku. Well, not outwork him in the sense of doing more push-ups, sit-ups than that, but just outstrength him, as he was born with those natural abilities. He was born with the skill. And why, yes, Izuku was born with it, he was also born with a lock around his abilities, locked away as the key was sealed under the ocean, as Izuku wasn't going to be able to unlock those abilities for quite a while. And with Bakugo coming in, it only made things worse. Izuku would start training even harder, just pushing himself even further, wanting to beat Bakugo. As he would continue doing this, and after his 10-year-old year, or his 5th grade year, or his first year in ninja school, he would be offered into a D2 ninja school, which is basically one of the lower ranked schools. See, D2 is basically one of the highest ninja schools you can get into through, say, something like middle school. Once you get into high school, you can get into D3, D2, or D1, which is basically UA. UA is considered the top of D1. It's just basically at the top of the ninja school world. So Izuku would train for it, and once he got an offer from a D2 middle school, or D2 middle ninja school, Izuku instantly took the opportunity. Now, the school was very, very eager to hear about Izuku's just special quirk-like ability. However, when he shook his head and said he wasn't really good at using one and he mostly just used his IQ, they would end up sitting back in their chair thinking for a moment. Son, you do know outsmarting certain ninja isn't always going to work. When we face off against other villages in wars, if you ever want to become a good ninja, if you're facing off against other villages or going on missions, you're not going to be able to outsmart them, as everyone's going to be on your level. All the ninja that become ninja and don't become just some office worker are real people just like you at your skill level. So you have to outwork them, and you're going to have to get good at using your certain power. Izuku's hair would block his eyes as he would end up smiling. Alright, I'll start practicing it a lot more. As he would walk out, as his smile would turn into a frown. He would clench his fists in anger. I'll outwork them. I'll show them I don't need some special power. As Izuku would be walking back to his house, when all of a sudden slime would end up seeping out over the underpass Izuku was walking on. A bridge would start having slime ooze down, concealing Izuku under it. As Izuku would look around, kind of shocked, as he would get out a kunai on his waist, as he would look around before the slime would materialize into a massive being standing before him, as two eyes would wobble down, now staring at the young boy. Ah, great. An easy target. This should allow me to get away from that pesky ninja. The slime monster would say, racing towards Izuku. However, before anything could happen, Izuku would duck out of the way when massive pillars would burst out of the ground, all made out of wood, with these metallic black-looking spikes protruding out of them. Izuku would look at them kind of confused, as all of this the sludge would start just yelling in pain before just completely dissipating, their power completely being nullified by this. Izuku would look around once again, yelling if there's a hero nearby. However, there wasn't anyone, as Izuku's eyes would end up widening. What? Izuku would say, looking down towards his hands. Is this really... Do I really have a power? He would say, his eyes lighting up, finally realizing he may have a power after all. He may not be quirkless. He could actually be strong. However, this wasn't Izuku. Someone standing far above him, standing onto one of the massive towers of the village, one of the biggest towers in the entire village, would be staring on towards him. With a cloak over his eyes, he would smile. There you go. I just knew you needed to unlock my power sooner, would say towards Izuku, as Izuku would end up staring towards his hands, that lock around his power deep down inside of him, loosening just a tad bit, and finally smashing wide open, breaking into hundreds of little pieces, as Izuku ended up staring at his hands, putting it on the ground as a massive tree would burst out of the concrete. He would stare towards it. This is amazing, he would say, rushing back to his house, as once he made it there, he would end up showing his Mom opening up his palm as wood would protrude out of it, materializing out of nowhere. His mother would smile down towards him, hugging him. "Oh, Suku, I just knew you had a power. I just knew it," she would say, tears streaming down her eyes, as Izuku would only just smile. I'm the best ninja in this village. I will. Trust me." Izuku would say. However, not long after this moment, what was considered the #1 ninja in the village, All Might, who had a strength quirk, would end up being crowned the Hokage of the village, the first ever Hokage of Daeguba village, a fairly new village that had mostly broken off from cast-outs and refugees of other villages that had been destroyed by wars and just attacks by villains. So Suke would end up hearing about this new Hokage position and would end up setting his sights for that. If that's what says you're gonna be the best, if that's what says you're the best ninja in the village, then I'm gonna become Hokage. Suke, clenching his fists. As he would end up walking into school the next day, everyone just talking about how All Might had been crowned the Hokage. "Hey, did you hear about All Might? Yeah, how he became the Hokage?" Izuku would butt into one of their conversations with a big, wide smile. "I'm gonna become the Hokage. I just know it." They would end up turning towards him as if, "Sure, you're good, but Bakugo over there's better. He's beaten you 9 times out of 10 in your 1v1s. I'm sure he'll become the Hokage. I'm sure of it." Izuku's eyes would slowly looking towards him, his eyes not as wide as they were, staring towards Bakugo, clenching his fists. It's just because he had his power before I did. If I had my power from the age of 4, I'd certainly be stronger than him. Izuku, before remembering all the work he put in to get here. As the next 3 years would go off very, very easy, as Izuku would now end up getting an offer to participate in the D1 school of UA. This ninja school would give Izuku an offer to come try out to try and get into the school. Izuku smiled down towards the letter, being one of the top-ranked students in his class. Well, not one of the top-ranked kid in his entire class, in his entire school. As Izuku smiled on towards it, as he would just slouching down into his chair, swirling around in it with his letter in his hands. I'm gonna become the Hokage. I just know it. As we now end up seeing Izuku walk in to the UA entrance exams, as Izuku would end up sitting down in his seat in this massive auditorium-like building. As a ninja would end up walking out. This would be a Jonin level ninja, being Present Mike. He would walk out or looking down at the papers of his script. Alright, so the first exam is going to be the written exam. This will show your knowledge of mathematics and literacy and your ninja knowledge. You need to have a respectable balance of all 3 if you even wish to make it any farther in this exam. You have 3 hours to complete this 20-page test. There are 7 pages for each. Literacy has 6 pages. Well, math has 7 pages, literacy has 6, and ninja has 7 as well. So, you may begin, President Mike would say, yelling loudly, as everyone would grab their pencils, scribbling down, as the sounds of pencils flicking back and forth on paper would echo throughout the auditorium. Izuku would fly through the mathematics and literacy section. However, once he got towards just the ninja section, his brain would start to sort of just crap out. It had been 2 hours and 30 minutes, and there was still another 30 minutes left to go for him to do the ninja section. But his brain started just to tweak out. He was kind of just confused. All that work of math and literacy had just tired his brain out so much, it had basically turned to mush. As Suzuki would turn towards it, he would look around at other people's papers before looking back down at his. And before he knew it, 15 minutes struck the clock. 15 minutes left. No, 14. No, 13. 12? No, 11? 10? Suzuki was counting as the minutes flew by. As he gripped his pencil harder, he's starting to sweat as beads of sweat would drill down his face. As he would sweating even faster, he would start moving his hands, finally realizing the answers as they all came to him. Flying through, finishing as the clock struck noon, and it was over. Izuku went back into his chair, giving a sigh of relief. Oh, thank God. Oh my God. Oh, thank God I managed to finish. He was rubbing his eyes before picking up his test, bringing it up to the front of the room. Placing it down, all of the students would then have a 1-hour grace period while the tests were graded by the Hokage and just a bunch of jonin around there. After that, they would decide if you would be able to take the ninja exam or if you just wouldn't make it at all. So we now end up seeing Izuku sitting there as you would end up being passed the paper. Izuku Midoriya, ninja level, middle school, Deet Udagoba Middle School, which happened to be one of the highest middle schools you could get that wasn't a private one. While yes, it was some sort of private, it wasn't like private that you needed to make a huge test to get into, like UA, as there were still D1 ninja middle schools, but those were mostly private ones for like ninja kids, like say Todoroki. So as Izuku would down towards it, he would smile, nodding his head before all of the other examinees would be moved out. As Izuku would be moved into a massive, just city-like area, which happened to be a replica of Daegoba Village, where he would end up being tasked with taking down just targets. These targets would be flying throughout the city, and it was aimed to measure your just power of agility while also your accuracy with throwing kunais. They weren't basing it off of how strong your quirks were, as that was for the second ninja exam. So as Izuku would grip the kunai in his hand, he would be standing there in this small, very small scale replica of Daegoba Village. As he would end up turning his head, flicking all these kunais he was given at these targets, as they would continue to get smaller and smaller, his accuracy so on point, flicking, just going so fast as they would land bullseyes every time. Izuku would keep this up, continuing to flick them, continuing to land bullseyes, as finally 3 minutes had passed and Izuku hadn't missed a single target. As all of a sudden, Izuku would end up seeing someone punch towards him. Jumping out of the way, Izuku would throw, as his bullseye would falter a little bit. However, he would continually dodging these fists coming out of walls, going to punch him, dodging them, hopping back and forth, as finally a fist would come flying out of nowhere after 20 minutes, punching him right across the face, causing him to throw the kunai up into the air, as him now lying on his back. As the kunai would be falling on the ground, Izuku would catch it an inch away from hitting his nose. Izuku would put his hand down, putting it onto the ground. Jeez, that was rough. He would, before getting up, as the speaker would say that Izuku had passed towards the second round. All of the Jonin had said they didn't expect anyone to even make it past 5 minutes, let alone 20. So Izuku was basically guaranteed a spot in the next exam. Which this next exam would end up being, there's going to be 5 Chunin level ninja scattered around scattered around a larger scale replica of Deku Village, with one Jonin there as well. And these Chunin level ninja, or just average level ninja, would be tasked with running around guarding certain points or bells that all of them had to get to pass. You have to get one bell to even make it towards the just next and final round, which would be a final written ninja exam to see if your ninja IQ truly was capable of being in UA. So as Izuku would stand there, all of the sudden the second ninja exam would begin. Izuku would rush right towards Chunin, placing his palm on the ground as massive tree stumps would eject out of the ground, encircling one of the Chunin. As Izuku would walk up towards him, so the Chunin would be completely stuck inside the wood, as it was far too dense and powerful for him to break with his brute strength, as he didn't have an explosive or strength type power / quirk. So Izuku would walk up to him, grabbing him by the neck, gripping him so tightly he could barely even move, as he would pull out a bell before clenching it in his hand, showing it up to one of the cameras, as they would say that he had passed on to the third and final ninja exam. Izuku would dissipate his wood, tossing it back towards just the Chunin level ninja, as the ninja would looking towards him just kind of in shock. Jesus, that kid's nowhere near the level they're at right now. All the students, or at least most of them, are still Genin level, not Chunin. Well, at least that's for one of the lower ranked classes. So we cut forward to see Izuku taking part in the third and final ninja exam, this being the written one. This would determine what ninja class you would be put in, as right now there was 40 ninja students still left in this video. Oh, and by the way, if you somehow manage to count how many times I say ninja in this video, I will go ahead and pin your comment. So this video is going to be long, and if you somehow manage to count it, no cheating of course, then I will pin your comment. So hopefully you can be lucky of just getting the magical sum of counting the ninjas I say. I know what the number is, so once again, no cheating. So the ninja of this exam would all just be writing down test answers as Izuku would turn it in, no sweat. He had read countless of ninja books left by his father, who was doing ninja work over in the US. So Izuku was no stranger to having to just read tons of ninja books and being educated on ninja ways. So he knew all of the questions basically from heart, so he would fly through it, turning it in, getting full marks, easily cementing himself into the D1 Ninja School of UA. Passing it with ease, Izuku ended up smiling down after receiving his badge saying that he had made it into UA, where he would end up getting his headband, which is the exact same as the Konoha headband, replicating the forest that surrounded Daigoba and the beach that it resided on. So, as Izuku would stare on towards his headband, signifying that he had passed, he would walk back home, as his mother would sit at the kitchen table with a worried look on her face. As Izuku would walk in, she would hurriedly get up, rushing over towards Izuku. Did you make it?" she would ask quickly, as Izuku would end up smiling with a smirk on his face. "Did I make it? Come on, what type of question is that? Of course I made it," Izuku would say, flashing his headband to his mother, as she would end up smiling. "I just knew you could make it, Izuku. I just knew it," she would say as Izuku would smile. "I just knew I could make it too, Mom. I just knew it too." As Izuku would nod his his mother would just telling him, well, I heard that the school year starts in around 2 weeks, so I'd start training if I were you. Oh, I'd start training. I've been training for years. So 2 weeks would pass as we now end up seeing Izuku slowly walk into class, wearing his unique style of clothes, as you can basically see in the thumbnail of this video. It's basically the exact same clothes he's wearing there. As there was no school uniforms, he was just wear whatever was comfortable for your ninja work. So as they would all be there, Aizawa would sitting at the front of the classroom, where he would end up saying in 2 weeks' time they are going to be assigned a Jonin teacher that is going to be just their teacher that's going to take them out on missions to get them a certain level of just ninja experience. So Izuku, knowing that he needed to get as much experience as possible, he would know that this is just the greatest possible time for him to even be here, as he had made it into one of the best ninja schools in the world, possibly, and now he was going to be able to become a hero with nothing holding him back. So as Izuku would smile on, end up stretching out, as they would end up walking down into the same city replica that they had all been in during the entrance exams. So, all of you are some of the best ninjas here. You all somehow managed to pass the 4-course exam that is engineered to be extremely hard, and so not just an average everyday person can pass through it. So, I congratulate all of you for making it this far. However, it's only going to be an uphill battle from here now. So, let's begin with a 2-on-2. A simple fight just to see where your level's at. So, Izuku, you'll be paired up with Chaco Uraraka. And Bakugo, you'll be paired up with Mineta. The number 1 just seed or the top examinee, Izuku, would be paired up with the bottom examinee, Uraraka, and the second examinee, Bakugo, would be placed up with the second to last examinee, Mineta. So as they would be there, Izuku would stretch out a little bit before they would stand across from each other. So each team will have 1 bell, as we see here. If that team loses their bell and the other team recovers it, then that means that team loses. Or if the other team are both knocked out, then that team loses and your team wins. So, let's begin! He would yell as both Bakugo and Izuku would rush towards each other. Bakugo going for an easy right hook with his explosion, something that had worked all too easily against Izuku pre-wood release. So, since Izuku could see this coming, he would dodge this using wood to block his place. Pushing off this wood, Izuku would end up sending massive trees going right towards Bakugo, as these tree branches would grow out, completely wrapping themselves around Bakugo's arms and legs. As Bakugo would start squirming through them using his explosions, breaking off the bark of the tree, however, not breaking it enough or significantly for it to do anything. So as Bakugo would continue to struggle, he wouldn't get anywhere at all, as the struggling would go, like I said, nowhere. With this struggling, Izuku would walk up to him, punching him across the face. "Do you remember how many times you beat me?" Izuku would say, as Bakugo would end up muttering, 27 times. "Well, there's 1, 2, 3, Izuku would say, punching him for every time Bakugo had won. As Bakugo would end up having a massive bruise on his left cheek at the end of this, as Mineta and Uraraka were only there on the sidelines watching. "Do you remember how many times I won?" Yeah, 5. Izuku would smile. 1. Izuku would say. However, for every time he won, it wouldn't only be 1, it would be 10, doing 50 to the other side, as 2 massive purple bruises would be left on the side of both Bakugo's cheeks, as Izuku would dropping the strength of the branches, as they would retract a little bit as Bakugo would fall to the ground, his head falling down just to the ground completely numb, so he would end up diving towards Izuku, going to tackle him. However, a massive wood wall would there in his place, as Bakugo wouldn't tackle Izuku, tackling a massive wall. As Bakugo's face would crunch into the side of it, he would slump to the floor, basically completely giving up. He would sigh before going completely unconscious. Izuku would walk over towards him, ripping off Bakugo's ninja headband, dropping it onto his head. You gotta work smarter than that, Bakugo, if you want to be a ninja. Like I said, I'm gonna become the next Hokage, Izuku would say, pointing towards himself. So all of the would end up looking kind of shocked at Izuku's overconfidence. It's only the first day of school and he's already saying he's gonna be the Hokage. Now, Aizawa would end up smiling before shaking his head. The kid's cocky, but he does have the power to back it up. He would mutter to himself as all of his students would look back towards him. What do you mean? Many of them not witnessing Izuku's display of power during the exams. I'm one of the only people that managed to see what he's capable of. Trust me, it's insane. His quirk, it's different from anything I've ever seen before. It's far more powerful than even the likes of maybe All Might when he was this age. But who's to say? We never truly know. As Izuku would look towards Uraraka, gesturing her to go fight Mineta, as Uraraka would shakily nod her head, jumping towards Mineta, going into fight, so Mineta would throw his pop-off quirk right towards Uraraka. However, Izuku would use his trees to block all of these purple orbs, blocking them with ease. So Uraraka would dodge around these woods as Izuku would yell left, right, left, which would psych Mineta out. As before this had happened, Izuku had realized what Mineta's quirk was, so he would tell her that, although it may be tricky, left meant to go right, and right meant to go left. So it would psych Mineta out, so once she would get up close and personal, with Mineta, she would slash him with a kunai right across his cheek before punching him square in the face, pushing him backwards as the bell would be released, as Uraraka would grab the bell, holding it up by this little strand of thread that was in place. Izuku would walk over towards her, saying, "Hey, nice job, Uraraka," putting his hand out for a high five as she would then high five it, as she would then immediately blush, instantly retracting her hand. "Oh, I'm sorry." "It's alright," Izuku would say, before he would end up walking back, as the rest of his classmates would end up going. And, after this, Izuku would be seen walking out of the school with his arms behind his head in a relaxed position. As he'd be walking out, all of a sudden, he would end up looking up, seeing a blonde-haired girl trip over one of the stone pathways. As Izuku would end up using one of the trees nearby, manipulating the tree branches that would grow, grabbing onto the girl, holding her back, holding her from falling down to the ground. Izuku would quickly rush up to her, pulling her back up by the neck of her shirt. "Whoa, that was a close one," Izuku would say, smiling towards her. She would end up saying, "Oh, thank you. I'm Izuku," Izuku would say, introducing himself. "Oh, and I'm Melissa Shield." "Oh, Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to meet you." "It's nice to meet you too," she would respond as Izuku would nod his head. "What class are you in, if you don't mind me asking?" "Oh, I'm in the, I'm in class 1B. "Oh, that's cool. I'm in class 1A. What part of the exam did you fail to make it into Class 1B? I'm not saying that's bad or anything, I'm just, saying, you're not in Class 1A after all, not trying to be rude. Oh, I was just so nervous at the end I kind of fumbled some of my answers. Oh, yeah, that almost happened to me during the first exam. Luckily, though, I managed to pull it together with 10 minutes left. I'm sorry to hear that you didn't make it, though. But I did hear that if you show enough promise, you can be moved up. So, you never know, you have 2 weeks to move up. Yeah, you're right. And that is where part 1 of What If Deku Had Wood release comes to an end. Part 2 will be coming out the day after Christmas, or the 26th of December, so please stay tuned for that, as it's going to be coming out pretty soon. Also, if you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing, as it really does help this channel out. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.